And it is, again, interesting in terms of the trans debate, how
Mhm.
feminism has led the way in raising
Yeah,
questions and concerns about the trans propaganda. And that
yeah,
has allowed, and particularly women from the left actually making the feminist argument about trans issues, and that has created the space for other people to enter a discussion where they risk of being cancelled
yeah.
previously.
I agree. The first radical feminist critique of the ideology of the trans movement came in the late 1970s by a extraordinary, feminist philosopher who's done work on violence and prostitution. So much she's contributed, and I think feminists did lead the way. In this case, I think the UK is far ahead of the US because the debate over what it means for instance, a male to claim to be female and therefore claim access to women's spaces. That debate is much more, I think, interesting in the UK. In the US, unfortunately, my left liberal comrades have all pretty much embraced the trans idea. And I think that's the detriment of girls and women. I think it's to the detriment of basic intellectual life. There's, I think, a lot of problems with the claims the trans movement makes. And I have been canceled many times. I've been pushed out of spaces.
Because I
I've
was
been
going to ask
disinvited.
you about that.
Uh,
What effect does being cancelled have on you? How does it affect your work? Does it lead you to any degree to self censor, or does it make you more determined to push your arguments?
I started writing about the trans issue 10 years ago, and I pointed out that it was basically, and this is the argument I make in the book, the trans argument is intellectually incoherent. It's not just that I don't understand it, it's that it's pretty impossible to make sense of it. I think it's an anti feminist politics because it undermines the safety and rights of girls and women. And I think it's also inconsistent with what I would call an ecological worldview, a way of understanding the human and the human body in an ecological context. And for my troubles, I have been I've lost many friends. I've been pushed out of organizations. I've had speaking invitations withdrawn. The usual kind of thing. Now, I'm not whining. I'm not asking people to feel sorry for me. I'm doing quite fine. But my concern is how it affects other people. So other people see me taking these uh, having these actions taken against me, and then they self-censor. So I happen to be kind of a obnoxious, loudmouth contrarian, I suppose. I don't mind people disagreeing with me, and I do regret losing friends. I do regret the spaces I'm no longer welcome in, but I worry more about how it affects other people. So, I'm a retired professor with adequate income to live fairly comfortably. I don't have a lot to worry about in this world. But younger people, people trying to build a career, people who are worried about, being cast out of certain kinds of intellectual and political networks, I think the self censorship is common. I mean, I hear from, if I had a dime for every friend of mine who said, I agree with you about the trans issue, but I don't dare say it in public, then I'd be a wealthy man.
That's very interesting because I think in the UK it has changed, but mainly thanks
Mhm.
to people like J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter books, who
Yes.
has taken a lot of flack for it, but who has made questioning the trans ideology respectable and has allowed people from across the political spectrum to raise questions. Clearly, that's not your experience in the US at the moment.
Well, it is changing slowly. There is more news coverage, for instance, of the very important Cass report that came out in the UK, questioning some of the so-called gender-affirming care for young people, especially. News of that reached the U.S. and it is being discussed, not as widely as I wish. But I think you're right. I don't know what it is about the UK and UK feminists. My friend Julie Bindel, for instance, has been at the forefront of this issue for 20 years now, and uncompromising and unafraid. And going back to your first question about how I stumbled into feminism, I think it was that courage and clarity of the radical feminist women I met that was really a model for me. And Julie's a good example. There are many women in the U.S. who I consider not only friends but role models because they simply don't back down. And that's the kind of politics we need, where people uh, have the courage to state their opinions, to offer evidence and reasons for those opinions, and to openly engage with the other side. You and I come from about as different political positions as possible, but there's no reason, we can't be courteous and respectful in dialogue.
Well, I think that's very important, which is why I think your book is so interesting and timely, because although I accept your point, there was never a golden age, I think it has got harder to have civilized debate with people who disagree with you. There's a greater tendency to shout people down. So tell me, finally, where can people buy your book?
Well, the book is not going to be out till later this summer. It'll be available in all of the usual online and brick and mortar stores, I hope. Um, you know, I'm taking a position that seems to annoy almost everybody. I jokingly said recently that this is a book that if I have any friends left, something in this book will lead them to stop talking to me. But I think that's important, to recognize that people can have find agreement on one issue and be in sharp disagreement on other issues. That it would be surprising if that weren't true. I don't consider myself an ideologue. I don't want to just accept political positions because my friends accept them. I love intellectual life. I love political life, and I think it's important, as you point out, as those standards erode, not only in the U.S. but around the world, that we really hold on to those, not just because they're important to democracy, which of course they are, but I would argue because it's fun. The most fun in the world I have is learning and arguing, and it's been a great joy to do it most of my adult life.